Hello, day number 4, and we're starting off with turkeys, it looks like. One wild turkey wandering across the road. Hopefully this is a good omen for things to come. See you, dude. Alright, the day has started off with, I think it's a little rough earth snake. This is about the absolute northernmost edge of the range, too. Pick this guy up. The bigger one. We'll take his rock back. Here we go. First snake of the day. Slightly bigger rough earth snake than yesterday's. Beautiful little fossorial guy. And yeah, up here in southern Kansas, this is the absolute northernmost edge of their range in the little blip that comes up into the mountains here. So finding these guys is pretty lucky in this area. There's a few other fossorial species out here that I'm hoping to find. We actually have a species of Tantella, the crown snakes, that lives in this area that we don't get further west. So hopefully there will be one of those under one of these rocks out here. So we'll take a few photos of this guy and then let him go. Yep, this day started off fast, barely 20 minutes out of the hotel. If you guys haven't seen the video from the previous day, make sure to check that out, because that's where I introduced this species with the first one that we found out near a lake down in Oklahoma. But this is a relatively small fossorial species. This guy is probably an adult. They don't get a whole lot bigger than this. And they like feeding on small earthworms and other creatures that they'll find under rocks, and they can be found in a number of different habitats. And these guys are found across a lot of the southern kind of Midwest area. Alright, dude. Alright, dude. Here you go. Right under your rock. There we go. There's another snake right here. Grab him out since he's trying to run away. Beautiful little ringneck. Snake number 2 for the day. Beautiful little prairie ringneck snake, Diodophis punctatus arnii. He's got that pretty orange belly, bright red tail, and that lovely orange ring around their neck that gives them their name. And he's musking a little bit because that's literally the only defense that they really have. So, beautiful little fossorial. Of course, we've seen a couple bigger ones on this trip, so we know this is probably last year's baby. Since they do get a little bit bigger than this. They like eating small, soft-bodied invertebrates like slugs and worms, things like that. A lot of them will also actually take centipedes, of all things, and often are food for other snakes. So we'll get a couple photos and release them. Without a doubt, this is the most common snake that we found on the trip, and in certain places, particularly in Kansas it seems, these snakes can actually reach incredible densities. You might find in a couple places there might be dozens underneath single pieces of cover. There could be thousands on a single acre of land in some places. And like I said earlier, these guys like to eat small, soft-bodied things, but they are also known to occasionally take small lizards, even other snakes, so they're fairly variable in their diet, and that might lend to why they're such a successful species across the entire U.S. with almost a dozen different subspecies. And this guy in particular is a beautiful example with that bright orange ring around his neck and really showing off the brilliant colors on the belly, particularly where it kind of fades from orange to bright red down near the tail, which they will coil up and flash in order to startle predators for an escape tactic.
Let's do something new.
Alright. Here you go, dude. In your little rock. There he goes. A moment. Alright, for our next find today, we got ourselves a young 5-line skink here. One of a couple of different species out here. These guys are often incorrectly referred to as blue-tailed skinks because, as you can see, like many other skinks in the U.S., the younger ones especially have that bright blue tail that they will freely drop in order to get predators to leave them alone. And that tail, when they do drop it, will continue to flip and twitch and stuff in order to distract the predator while the actual skink gets away. So it's a very effective defense mechanism. You can see here, he's all ready to bite, because that's also about the only other thing they can do to defend themselves. You can see why they're called 5 lines, because, yes, ow, hello. You're not very powerful with your bites. But you can see here, if I hold them out, why they're called the 5 lines, because they've got those beautiful white and black lines running down their backs. And as they grow up, this guy will lose his blue tail, but he'll continue to keep those lines. Other species that look kind of similar will tend to lose a lot of their pattern as they grow up and develop different colorations. So we'll get a couple of photos and then get him back on his way. This is the first new species of the day, and again, one of the many species that I don't really get to see in Colorado, although we do have some of its relatives, such as the Great Plains and many-line skinks. These guys are actually rather similar to a number of other species that are found throughout the U.S. in their general pattern and including the blue tails. And even as they get older, males will often kind of fade out, the stripes will kind of disappear, while the females will often resemble the young a lot. And the males will develop a bright red head, particularly during the breeding season, as kind of a sign of their strength and health. So in order to tell them apart from other species, you often have to look at really small details, like structure of the scales on the head or along the body, presence or absence of certain scales, and then exactly how much pattern they gain or lose as they grow up compared to some of the other species, particularly further east and southeast from here. These guys tend to eat small insects, and like a lot of other lizards, they are often active in the heat of the day more than snakes are, and they are a favored food for not only a lot of other snakes in the area, but also a number of other animals such as birds of prey, even small flycatchers and other songbirds, and also sometimes small mammals such as rodents, voles, shrews. Even larger things like skunks, raccoons, and foxes will feed on these guys. So in many places they are extremely common, but also an extremely important food source because of that commonality. I know, you're trying. I know, you're trying to bite me too. You don't have the power that the Great Plains skinks do. Okay, dude, this is your rock. Ready? There you go. Under your rock. See what else we got here. Shortly after we dropped back down into Oklahoma for a little bit, and I spotted a little pile of stones on the side of an open cultivated field, and while Mom stopped to get some photos of the mass bloom of red clovers in the field, I very quickly found this guy. Look, another little 6-line race runner. Little whiptail lizard. See all his colors, and unlike the one we found a few days ago, his eyes are not full of dirt, so he's all bright and alert today. Some nice yellow colors on his sides, so we'll get a couple of photos, and where there are lizards, there's things that eat lizards, so we'll keep looking. These guys really are beautiful lizards too when they're not covered in dirt, and my record in finding them in Kansas and Oklahoma certainly is a lot better than being able to catch them here in Colorado, where I always seem to find them when they're warmed up and ready to go and are out of my way in 2 seconds flat. So, here you go, dude. Okay, just gonna go out there. And not only did he not go back under his rock, he actually just kind of continued to hang out in the open for a while, and quite a while later, he attempted to go and hide under my foot. And considering all else that we were about to find in this rock pile, not exactly the smartest of lizards. We got here a pair of mating bumblebee moths. If I can keep them in focus or not. There they are. I'm used to seeing hawk moths, but not so much the actual bumblebee moths that we get over here. So that's pretty cool. Alright, we got ourselves a speckled king, and he's going down a hole, so I can't let him go. Whoops! We got ourselves a speckled king, and he's going down a hole, so I can't let him go. Whoops! Look at that. He's musking all over the place, but it is a beautiful speckled king snake. Lovely flip in this little rock pile here. And he's going into shed, so he'd actually be even prettier later on. So he's a little dull right now compared to what he would normally be. So we'll get a couple of photos and then let him go on his way. First speckled king of the day, third of the trip overall, and fourth overall king snake. Pretty good for one trip around. And as you'll notice, a lot of the snakes right now are kind of in that blue phase when they're getting ready to go through shed, and that's pretty common in the spring as these guys are coming out of their dormancy period and they're kind of getting their first meals, getting their first rays of sun. They'll kind of take time to get rid of their old skin that they had over winter, because often these guys will kind of develop water blisters or other kind of unsightly little bits on their skin from sitting around in cold, damp environments, and so they'll shed to get rid of all that, have nice, clean, better skin, and start off the year in much better health. Big old vitty centipede going under there. Alright, so this guy is really tiny, so we got to be very careful with him, but we have just found a western narrowmouth toad. Better called a narrowmouth frog though, because they're not actually toads. They're actually pretty common little guys once you get down out into the plains here. Extremely rare in Colorado, but these guys are one of only a couple of species in their genus, and they're fairly unique and kind of in their own family, split off from a lot of the other frogs. They're called narrowmouth frogs because they have this really tiny pointed snout, and they don't have a mouth that opens up very wide, unlike most other frogs, which are literally just mouths with legs. These guys will eat small invertebrates, and they live under all the various rocks out here, just kind of hiding away in moist areas. You can see he's ready to go. Keeping my hands wet so that we don't let him dry out too much. And so we'll get a couple quick photos and let him go before I dry out too much and get him drying out. All that moisture and the strange smells of the frog also attracted a local housefly, which, as you can see, didn't really want to leave us be. But these guys are called toads sometimes because of their rather terrestrial habit. They're not usually found in water. They can often be found quite a distance away from any actual standing water. Like right here where we're at the edge of a cultivated field. The nearest stream was maybe a quarter mile plus away, maybe even more than that. And so they're often just in various semi-moist environments on open land. And the genus name actually kind of calls back to that really narrow snout, Microhylidae, which is really unique amongst the frogs, since most frogs, they're literally mouths with legs. These guys, not so much. They actually have a fairly distinct head and separated from the rest of their body. We got a second race runner who's covered himself in dirt here. Trying to clean him off so we can see his pretty green colors here and the blue on his sides. There we go. It's not often that I get to catch the big ones like this, but... So, these guys will get almost twice this size when they're full grown, but they're still not a huge lizard. As you can see, unlike the skinks, they're not quite as much for biting. And you can also see on this guy, just like the skinks, there's a place right here where the texture of his tail changes, because he's broken that off at some point and then regrown this because a predator went after him. So we'll get a couple of photos and then let him go. Yep, if the babies are hard to catch, the adults even more so, because they're already savvy to everything that's trying to eat them. So this is quite a treat to be able to get an adult in hand. And while I didn't get quite the best photos, apologies for that, you can still see here that on the adults, those really bold black and yellow patterns that the babies have tend to kind of fade away, and the viridis part of the prairie race runner's Latin name shows up even more, as those colors are replaced instead by these bright green and blue hues across the animal's body. Alright, we got a baby last year's ringneck. Tiny little guy, but no less cute. He's got that pretty belly. Not as bright. He might actually be going through shed as well. Adorable little guy. Alright, and we'll get a couple of photos and let him go. Like many other snakes, ringnecks are egg layers, and they will tend to lay those eggs in damp, warm hollows that they can find either under rocks or in rotting logs. And then when the babies hatch out in late summer, they are ridiculously small, only a couple of inches long, and they'll start finding small organisms to feed on before winter comes in, and then the next year they'll start really growing. Now for one rock pile, that was a pretty good haul, but of course we can't stick around for too long at any one spot, especially after combing the whole little area that was maybe 10 feet wide. Just down the road we saw a little tufted titmouse up in the trees. These guys are related to chickadees. And then some rather interesting insects up and down the roads as we moved from Oklahoma back up towards Kansas. Some really big grasshoppers and then some pretty butterflies. I'm not an entomologist, so I'm not great on what species these are, but if you have an idea, certainly feel free to leave a note in the comments.
There might be a she. It looks like she's laying eggs in the road there. How odd.
And here, the dork himself in his natural habitat. These are rock cuts that you can find along the sides of the roads where they pass through hills are often great places to find a lot of species, since there's a lot of cracks and crevices for snakes and lizards and such to hide out in. I was really hoping to maybe turn up another timber rattlesnake somewhere along them, but alas, no doing. Got ourselves another little ringneck here. Very dark guy on the top. Some great colors on his belly. He's coiling his tail up as a defense. They do that to flip over that bright red and try and startle predators so that they take a moment to think, do I really want to eat something that's showing off bright red colors, since that usually means toxins? And then that usually gives a chance for them to either get away, or it just scares the predator enough to make them leave the snake alone. So we'll get a couple of photos of this guy and then put him back under his rock. I think this might be blackberries flowering here. It's beautiful. Oh, look at this. Just a stretch of boulders. Question is, how do I get up onto here? And can I flip this at all? No, I cannot. That's okay, I'm just looking along here. Come back down and out and go the other way. stream down here, and there's frogs jumping away from me into it. See if I can figure out where that one guy went. He took quite a flying leap. I don't see him now. Oh, there he is. Oh, it's a little tiny cricket frog. Look at you. You are adorable. Hi. Alright, we'll let you go. Go that way. There you go. One right there. He's a beautiful oh, come back. Or not. Got him. Look at you. Beautiful green colors. Easter froggy. You're just kind of everywhere. So where are the things that eat the frogs? That is the question. These old pools. Oh, little bird over in the water there. Taking a bath. It's adorable. Why? Did something bad happen? No, because it's curious to watch. Where's the bird? Where's the bird at? Oh, there he is. Touch this wall that much. There's lots of spiders. There's something other than spiders in here. It's in the water. I don't know what it was, though.
Once again talking, we would once again be those stupid people who died at the beginning of a whole movie. Let's not talk about this. We would be those idiots. But everyone's going, why would you do this?
Because it makes good TV. I'm wondering what it is in the water. There it goes. There's another, is it fish or is it, I don't even know.
Too shallow. Probably amphibian.
I wouldn't say it's too shallow. Because this is probably the driest it's at any point in the year.
Yeah, that's why I took advantage of being able to walk under the bridge.
Yep, there's a king snake. Look at you. There's a speckled king. All right.
Boom.
Look at you. First rock we flipped, little speckled king snake. There's quite a few other rocks to check out over here. So another one of these beautiful guys. He might be last year's baby, or he could be a couple of years old at this point. He's just starting to lose his banding and get all of his speckles in. And of course he'll get quite a bit bigger. They'll get up to 4 feet or so. Amberpeltis jatula holbrooki. So we'll get a couple photos and then put him back under his rock. And that, I think, was the very first actual flip clip that I have captured yet. The moment of seeing the snake under the rock. And this guy, despite being really young still, might compete with the adult king snake we found the day before for the prettiest one that we found on the trip, with these brilliant deep black and bright yellow contrasting patterns. Certainly a snake that you really can't beat seeing in person. And it was also really nice that a lot of the king snakes were behaving themselves on this trip. A bit of musking, but that's normal, but not a whole lot of biting. Only the one prairie king who really gave much of an attitude. Not something that a lot of people might encounter, since these guys can often be fairly bitey in defense, since they don't have a whole lot of other ways to defend themselves. Now I'm considering going back and trying to flip those. Alright, dude. Your rock is really tight. There we go. Okay, you were under there. We'll find your house. Yep, there he goes. Let's roll this way. Nobody. Other than some odd-looking beetles. Nope, can't get that one up. Pretty little white flowers over there. And some flat rocks to flip. Let's see here. This whole pile could have stuff under it, but a lot of this I would just never be able to flip. I can't move that one. Ringneck! Look at you. There's another. You're a good size. You're freaking out. Calm down. Look at you. It's another little ringneck. This guy's actually in shed, so he's not as brightly colored as normal, and you can actually see that on his belly there. Everything's kind of shaded over in this slightly whitish blue sheen. That's a special liquid that they kind of secrete between the layers of their skin that helps separate the skin from the rest of the body so that it'll slough off easier in one piece later on. And so they'll be like that for anywhere between like 3 and 8 days, and then they'll clear up for a day or two before they actually shed. So the eyes will clear up again, and then they'll go find something rough to rub their nose against to peel back the skin right at the edges of their lips, and then peel the rest of the skin off in one go across their body. So this guy will be doing that in the next few days, and then he'll be bright and colorful as new again. Yep, lots of snakes in shed at this time of year, but even when in shed, they're no less beautiful. Anyway, this was actually one of the last snakes that we found out in this kind of prairie area before we started heading a fair bit further west, transitioning away from the Flint Hills and into what starts to become the true Great Plains prairies. However, the place that we would stop at next was not so much prairie as a bit of more forest corridor, hoping for that one last shot at a rat snake or a copperhead. Alright, so you were right under this rock. We'll let you go. You just figure out, and there he goes. Very nice. We'll see if there's anything else under some of these last few flat rocks over here. Leaving the Flint Hills, we crossed over a fairly large stretch of mostly just continuous plains habitat before reaching the Arkansas River Valley. This is another stretch of somewhat forested area that runs up from Oklahoma down south, and while there are no timber rattlesnakes known in this area, unfortunately, could be probably due to the heavier human development, there are copperheads recorded there, so we decided to stop by a nearby nature center to hopefully run across these guys since they had been recorded there. And the first things that we saw, most of what we saw there, were birds, including our first really decent looks at the northern cardinals, which I don't get to see back home. Visiting a nature center near Arkansas City, watching the goldfinches out on the feeders outside. It's also cardinals and chickadees we've spotted. Several different warblers. That might be one of them. Actually, no, that's another finch of some kind. All sorts of birds in these trees. Hopefully we'll find a copperhead down below somewhere. This is an absolutely beautiful area. The Nature Center sits right on the edge of both a little bit of remnant tallgrass prairie as well as the actual Arkansas River floodplain. So as you walk down from the actual center building, you enter a really kind of thick oak forest that spreads out across the actual floodplain. So filled with all sorts of crisscrossing little streams and channels, and then out towards the actual river.
He's up there.
A blue jay? Several times we tried to get video of the deer that kept popping in and out of the brush, but unfortunately all we were able to really catch were a lot of the birds that were in the area. These guys, I'm not entirely sure what species they are. Sparrows are really hard to tell apart, but I think they might be chipping sparrows or possibly savanna sparrows. Someone who's better versed with birds can probably tell me. Moving past these guys, we actually went out to look at the Arkansas River itself. At this time of year, it's fairly low, fairly dry, so there's a wide sandy bank on the area, and you can see a lot of the driftwood in this area. There were tracks of lizards all over, so I was hoping to catch one of those guys, but alas, they did not show up. I would assume man-made. You can see with Mom for scale here, some of these trees in the floodplain are actually quite large, and these may have actually been pushed down by the river itself, which kind of shows you during the wet season and particularly heavy rain years just how powerful these rivers can actually be. Now, as we moved away from there, we went back into the trees, found a lot of crows that kept calling. I had hoped they would lead us to something, since if you listen to crows and you follow them, if they're calling a lot in one particular area, it often means there's a predator. So if you follow them, you can sometimes find whatever they're being unhappy about.
There you are. Mm-hmm.
Yes, no, the battery's supposed to last longer. Something's odd with it. The fact that it just realizes it's running low and then just 5% left is not what it's supposed to be doing.
And this was the last bird that we managed to catch on my good camera, because at this time I only had one battery, a lesson that I have learned not to repeat since. Always have some extras carrying around that you can use, but this is a great crested flycatcher, species that I don't think I have seen before, but they're fairly common across much of the US. Really pretty birds, very loud, kind of wheeling call, and very large sharp bill. They're good at catching aerial insects. And like most birds, they don't stay still in one place very long, so it was only very short clips that we managed to catch of him. But after the main camera died, I still had the phone and the GoPro, so we continued to try and look around for things. This nature center actually has some really cool things set up here. There's a big storytelling chair that my mom decided to sit in to give you an idea for scale, and also some natural tall grass prairie that's still left. Example of tall grass prairie at the height of summer when all the grass.
This is what they rode their
Yeah, imagine you're riding.
wagons through.
Well, imagine if you're sitting even like on horse. But it was at this point I started to discover the apparently famed technical glitches that GoPros can kind of have. As this one started to run out on its battery, it would just kind of cut filming at various times. But this little patch here is kind of what is left of tall grass prairie. Almost 95% of it is now gone. A natural habitat that is vital to a number of different species that used to live much more broadly in the Great Plains, now often found only in patches here and there throughout the east. This was grass that, unlike a lot of the short grass prairie that most people might be familiar with now, this is grass that grew to an average of between 6 and 10 feet tall. It was major habitat for a number of grassland birds, as well as coyotes, eastern wolves, and even elk and bison thrived on this environment, and it is almost entirely gone now. Alright, well, after all day trundling around in the forest down there, we came up to the prairie section, and lo and behold, found a little ringneck cruising around out here, just diving off into the weeds. He's got some beautiful colors showing off too, absolutely gorgeous red. And a little orange ring around his neck today. This guy's actually pretty nice, kind of silvery gray color, and he's had a hard life too, because I can see several scars and bumps all along his body where things have gone after him. So he's been a pretty lucky one. So we'll get a photo or two and then let him go. And the rest of my friends and family are still amazed at how I can spot these guys wiggling through the thickest of grasses and still manage to catch them. But this beautiful ringneck, kind of fitting that the most common snake of the trip would also end up being our last find. Alright, well, little ringneck to finish out the day, and a really beautiful area to hike around. The really big snakes, hello Nathan, the really big snakes have evaded us on this trip, or at least in the live version they have, since we found a dead Massasauga and timber, and we need to find a live one at some point, but that just means incentive to head back east at some point. So hopefully on a future adventure we'll see us back somewhere in the forest further east of here. As always, thanks to my supporters on Patreon for helping support the production of videos like this, Nathan being one of them, Denise, Mom being another, and Jana and Sandy as well. If you would like to help support, as always, consider joining as a patron at www.patreon.com/hcarlton. Members there get extra benefits back as well, exclusive clips and photos, early product notices for the website, and a few other things as well. If you don't want to join in for a monthly subscription support, you can always consider just checking out the website, Carlton Carnivores, checking out the shop there. We have plants for sale. There's the resin gem jewelry from the snakeskins from the animals at home. Or there's also the links to the Teespring website for merch of that form, mugs and t-shirts, stickers, and more. And if you don't feel like supporting in that manner, as always, attention to the videos always helps. So like and subscribe. Make sure to turn on the black bell in YouTube so that you get all notifications for things coming up. And also, share the videos around. The more people who see it, first, of course, the more people who get to be educated about wildlife, and the more attention that the channel will get. And then you can always find me as well on social media, sharing photos and videos all the time. Facebook and Instagram, even TikTok at times, Carlton Carnivores. And until next time, I'm Hawk and Carlton, and this is Carlton Carnivores.